cutting edge ministry with relevant messages, every message that comes forth here. But the Lord's going to take us into some deeper worship, I believe. We may have to do it during the week sometime, as we used to do on corporate prayer, but God's going to do some good things. If you've joined us on Facebook, welcome. We're so glad you're part of us. And if you would touch the share button, I want you to share this message today. I'm going to be talking to you in just a few moments, part 1 on how to hear the voice of God. It's not a deep subject, but it's a subject that myriads of people don't understand. God's always talking and always speaking, but we're not always listening. Now, we're located right now at 221 Paul's Drive in Brandon, Suite A. We're across the street from the Brandon Post Office, and we'd like for you to join us. If you're part of another church, we don't want to take you out of there, but we would love to have you come and join with us and worship anytime that you can. Now, I'm going to come back here in just a few short minutes. Dr. Patricia is going to come and speak for just a very few minutes on one of the names of God, about how he speaks. So if you come right now, and let's just get into it. Praise God.
Thank you, Archbishop. Well, last week we talked about Yahweh Rohi, the shepherd, and this week we're going to be talking about Kol Yahweh. It goes right along with the message that Archbishop has for us today, part 1. Kol Yahweh is a Hebrew phrase that appears throughout the entire Old Testament. The pairing of Kol with Yahweh carries a very significant meaning, as it signifies the voice or the sound coming from the divine, and translates to the voice of Yahweh or the voice of the Lord. It can also be translated as the sound of the Lord. The Hebrew Kol can mean both voice and sound. It depends on how it's being used. It was Kol Yahweh who spoke in Genesis 1:2-29 when he was creating the world. He spoke it into existence. The sound of his voice brought it into existence. I'm going to use quite a few scripture references, so if you want to write them down, get pencil and paper to do that. Some people like to go back and read the scriptures when I give them. When Adam and Eve in Genesis 3:8, when they were in the garden where they heard the sound of the Lord walking, well, that's interesting, because a literal translation is, and they heard the voice of Yahweh God walking in the garden. That's interesting to me. I'm going to have to delve a little bit further into that. In 1 Samuel 3:4-14, the prophet Samuel hears the voice of God calling him, Samuel, Samuel. You can read more about it if you care to. In Exodus and Deuteronomy, it uses the phrase voice of the Lord to refer to the law given on Mount Horeb. It's also used in the context of prophetic visions, such as in Isaiah 6:8, where Isaiah hears the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? In Isaiah 30:31, the voice of the Lord is used in conjunction with his judgment against Assyria. Micah 6:9 also uses the voice of the Lord in a similar way when he gives a warning to the Israelites. And in Psalms 29, it speaks about the voice of the Lord. And here are a few declarations. You can go and read the whole Psalm 29 if you care to. His voice thunders over the rushing waters. His voice has power and splendor. His voice cracks the cedars. I like that. His voice flashes fiery flames, and his voice shakes the wilderness. These are just a few of the declarations and the descriptions of what his voice can do. The phrase Kol Yahweh can be translated either as the voice of the Lord or the sound of the Lord, and both translations are valid. We may never hear his audible voice like they did. I know that there are some people in modern times who have heard his audible voice. It's rare, but it does happen. But we do hear his voice. He speaks to each one of us individually the way he is familiar with us. One person may speak and listen in one way, and another person he speaks to and they listen in a different way. So it's not all the same. And he may speak to people in different ways at different times. I know he has with me. And I've never heard his audible voice, but I do hear his voice. And to hear his voice, you have to be familiar with him. If you have a friend, a close friend, when you hear their voice, whether it's in a crowd or they call up on the phone and they say hi, you immediately know who it is. So that's the way we have to be with the Lord in order to hear his voice accurately. And he'll never go, whatever he speaks, he will never go against what his word, what he says in his word. He speaks to us through his Ruach HaKodesh, which is the Holy Spirit. So we need to have a close relationship with him to hear what he's saying. He speaks to us in our spirit. Sometimes it's a sense, just a sense that we need to do this and we need to do that. Or sometimes he speaks to us through his written word. Something that we've read for 1,000 times will just jump out. It's like it's illuminated on the page and it just jumps out at us. He speaks to us that way. He can speak to us through a song. He can speak to us through another person that might say something to us. He has various ways of speaking to us. So the more we practice listening and following his inner voice, the more we experience a sense of peace and purpose and belonging in our lives. In conclusion, the sound of his voice is a powerful and confirming force that can bring us back to ourselves and connect us to the larger world. His voice can help us find our way through life's ups and downs and their conflicts so we can make wise decisions. It's a reminder that we're not alone. He's always, always with us. May we each have ears to hear and believe his words. He speaks to us, so let's be obedient to his voice so that in all things we may bring him glory. Please remember to pray for all those in authority, including those in your local government, state, and those in authority in Washington, D.C. Whenever you see something happening around you, pray about it right then. You don't have to wait till later. And pray for the peace of Jerusalem and all Israel. May you have a week full of blessed shalom. Thank you. And here comes Archbishop.
So many times God speaks, but we're not listening. But he's speaking always. I'm in a corner. If you're watching us, I'm in a corner, so I won't stand in front of the TV here. But look at the ways that I've listened. He speaks in his audible voice. She just talked about some of that. Dreams and visions, inner witness, thoughts and impressions, his word, prophetic utterance, the 9 gifts of the Spirit, or the 5 ministry gifts. Now, he can do this, but there's just so much on this subject. It's one of the subjects in our Bible college I've been teaching for a long, long time. But since the beginning of time, God has always spoken to his people. Since the beginning of the earth as we know it. Now, today, I'm going to talk about his audible voice. We'll tell you a little bit about that. Dreams and visions and inner witness. Next week, we're going to do thoughts and impressions, his word, prophetic utterance, gifts, and the 5 ministry gifts. Now, sometimes, without realizing this, when God speaks, he'll back it up by his word. He doesn't always talk the way we talk, in idle chit-chat. Go to the next page there. He doesn't speak in idle chit-chat to us sometimes, but his will is enforced by his word. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 35, we have it there. Cast not away, I'll get in this a moment here. Cast not away, therefore, your confidence, for it carries a great reward. For you have need of patience and persistence, that after you've done the will of God, then there's another phrase that goes with that, the original interpretation. After you've done the will of God with his word, you'll receive the promise. Now, once again, God's will is in his word, in his nature, in his love, forgiveness, health, healing, abundance, etc., salvation, all the way down. His will is in those things. Now, one thing about his will, when we talk about it, am I in the will of God or am I not in the will of God? Two ways to look at it. Number one is Jesus died and gave us all things that's in God's will, what he wills for us, like our last will and testament. Then there's another part of the will of God where we are in a specific place or doing a specific thing. Now, his will is in his word, as I said, Ephesians 4:11. Go to the next page. We get into the 5 ministry gifts. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on him. Ephesians 4, he gave some to be apostles, some to be prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers for the perfecting or the equipping of the saints. Now, God can assist us in hearing through the gifts of the Spirit or through one of the ministry gifts, apostle, prophet, etc., but nothing replaces our relationship with him. The more time you spend with him, the more you'll recognize his voice. He speaks in so many ways, as she just said, but always on a level we can understand. I remember when I first became born again 56 years plus ago, he didn't speak to me like he does now because I wouldn't understand it. But he spoke to me on a level that I could understand, a level of my faith, a level of my growth, of my spirituality. Now, Holy Spirit will also seed our thoughts. Now, I'm just trying to lay a foundation with this. He'll bring impressions in our spirit eyes. I'm going to show you that here in a moment, where we see what is beyond present. Now, think about this. Scientists has proven, and this probably fits me maybe even more, that the average person has over 6,000 thoughts that go through their mind in a day. That's a lot of thinking. Sometimes we meditate on those thoughts, and sometimes we move right on. It's a proven fact. Now, Psalms 119, go to the next page there. Psalms 119, on where we are. Oh, I didn't put that up there for you. I'm sorry. Psalms 119, verse 105. David said, Lord, your word is a lamp unto my feet, a light to my pathway. Psalms 119, verse 130. The entrance of your words give understanding and light. Now, thoughts can be about plans. Our thoughts can be about problems. Our thoughts can be about a person, loved ones, work, or God's promises to us. And then we learn to discern what is God and what's not God. I'm going to show you that. He should fill our soul, or he will fill our soul with the word if we give him a time. Spend 5 or 10 minutes. I've heard people tell me for years, I just don't have time. I just don't have. Get up 10 minutes earlier. Read the word. Memorize some scriptures. I have memorized, without exaggeration, I don't know how I could quote them all, but thousands of scriptures in the last 56 years. Now, God speaks in his audible voice. Understand that in the Old Testament, it's like he spoke all the time to people, to his leaders, in his audible voice. Today, we don't hear it that much. Now, if you meet someone today, and I'll be careful with this, that said, God always speaks to me in an audible voice, run, because that's not true. He speaks in too many different other ways. There are numerous places throughout the scripture that he spoke in his audible voice, even in the New Testament. Now, one of the things, let's go to the next page. No, there you are, I'm sorry. He speaks warning. And he'll either do a warning with an audible voice or an impression within, which I'm going to show you. Hebrews 11:7, you see it there. By faith, Noah, being directed or warned of the things not yet seen, moved with godly fear and prepared an ark for the saving of his household. Noah heard the voice of God. Number 2, he will give a confirmation. There's been many times when feel the Lord's impressing me to do something. I don't hear the audible voice, but I hear the voice of my spirit. But there's times when I want a confirmation. And you just don't move sometimes just without a confirmation. He always gives a witness. By the mouths of two or three, he confirms a thing. But look at this, Judges chapter 6. This was Gideon. Angel of the Lord came to Gideon and said, you're going to deliver Israel. You're going to set them free. And he said, I'm a nobody. I'm the youngest in my father's house. I've never done anything great. But then he put out a fleece. And he said, now, Lord, I'm going to put out a piece of wool and I'm going to lay it on the ground. And if I get up tomorrow morning and that piece of wool is dry and the ground's wet all around, I know that you said go deliver Israel. God did it. And then he still wasn't convinced. How many times should he be convinced? And so he reversed it. But finally God said, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'll keep my word. I'll keep my promise of what I told you to do. Now, he will give instruction and he will give direction. Judges chapter 6, verse 14, again about Gideon. And the Lord said, go in your might and you will save Israel. Joshua chapter 1 and verse 2, Joshua is taking over. Remember, Moses had died. The Lord said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now arise, go over this Jordan and all the people in the land that I've given them and all the children. So God was saying, here's the instruction. Here's the direction. I remember one time years ago in my gospel tent ministry, I've shared this a few times, but I thought about it a couple of days ago, that I was in a meeting in Orlando, a tent revival, and I had an associate minister with me. I told him to take over the meeting, and the Lord said, I want you to go to Brooksville. Now, that's not too far from us if you're in this area, too far from Tampa. I'd been through Brooksville many, many times, never even gave it a thought. So I hopped in the car and I took off to Brooksville. And as soon as I got into the city limits sign, it's like, what do I do now? But I heard it so loud, I would almost be convinced it was the audible voice of God. And then I got to the city limits and the Lord said, go to 3rd Street. I heard this in my spirit. I turned right on 3rd Street. Then he said, go down to 5th Avenue. I turned on 5th Avenue. I remember distinctly. And there was about 5 or 6 turns that I was supposed to make. And finally, I came up on a dead-end street wondering what I'm doing here. And I looked around the corner and there's an old beat-up, torn-up gospel tent. A travel trailer that all 4 tires are flat on it, and a flatbed truck that had all the equipment on, and it was falling down. But now listen to how God works. As soon as I pulled on that lot, this gentleman come running out with his family, his wife and 2 daughters, and he said, the Lord told me you were coming. Well, I didn't know him from Adam. Never seen him before. And then he began to tell me what was going on. He said, we don't have enough money to buy groceries. We don't have enough money to get out of town. He said, but God said he was sending you. I said, do you know my name? He said, I don't need to know your name. I just need to know I saw your face and here you are. Hallelujah. Long story short, I began to pray. That night, I preached in his tent. Had been raining. Water is everywhere. Holes in the tent. But I knew God sent me. To make the story very short here, I stayed there for almost 4 weeks. And God began to move. People began to come from all over the neighborhood. We didn't have any musicians in the beginning. Finally, a couple of fellows that were attending a local bar staggered in. One played a guitar and one played a piano. I paid them. I said, I don't care whether you're saved or not. I want you to play the music. Now, some Pentecostals have a problem with that. But they got saved during the meeting. But here's the thing. The Lord allowed me. That was just so great. I love it. I won't tell you how much. I bought him a brand new tent, my ministry, bought him a brand new tent. We bought him new tires for his travel trailer. We bought a used truck for him, and I gave him almost $3,000 to leave town. Now, from then on, every place I went, he followed me. But here's the point. I obeyed what God said to do, and the blessings followed me over and over and over. But in the very beginning, I was almost dead certain that I heard his audible voice. Now, Moses heard God's audible voice in a burning bush. Now, we may not have a burning bush experience unless he really needs to convince us. Some people just have to be really convinced. But we may never have that, but if he really needs to convince you, he'll do whatever's necessary. Now, then in the book of Numbers, You don't see this on your screen. Book of Numbers, chapter 22. There was the king of the Moabite tribe, and his name was Balak. He was an evil man. And then there was a prophet by the name of Balaam. Now, Balaam was considered a mercenary prophet. He prophesied for good, or for goods, for finances. And Balak came to him and said, I'll give you all of this wealth if you'll just curse Israel. Well, without thinking, you can't curse what God blessed. But he tried, and it didn't work. Now he's riding his donkey, if you read the story. He's riding his donkey down the road, and all of a sudden an angel jumps out in the road, and the donkey runs off in the field. And Balaam's beating him, saying, get back on the road. Finally, the donkey gets back in the road. They go a little while longer. See, God was trying to turn Balaam around, but he wouldn't listen. Help us, Lord. Anyway, the second time, an angel jumped out, and the donkey stopped and ran up against the mountain and crushed Balaam's foot. Now he's really mad. He's beaten the donkey. And then he goes a little bit further. Now an angel stands out with a sword. In other words, God's saying, I want you to stop. And the donkey falls on his face. Now, Balaam is so upset, he doesn't even understand what's going on, and he's beating the donkey and beating it, and the donkey speaks to him. Now, I know we read that in Scripture, but God's talking through the donkey. The donkey said, why have you been beating me these 3 times? Balaam is so angry, he doesn't even realize the donkey's talking. Well, I love this part. Then the donkey said, I've been your donkey all these years, and now look what you're doing to me. But here, the whole thing is, God was trying to stop him, and it was with an audible voice. Now, in Exodus 12, we won't read all the scriptures there, but God talks to Moses with an audible voice and tells him what he's going to do, delivering Israel, how Israel's going to come out of bondage out of Egypt, and what he's to do with the blood of a lamb. We won't go through all of the scriptures there, but he's to take a lamb without spot and blemish, which was prophetic of Jesus coming, and he's supposed to slay the lamb, take the blood, and put it on the lintel of the houses, of the door, and on the side post, and the angel of death is going to pass over during the night, and everything of the firstborn in Egypt will be slain. But everywhere the blood is, even with Israel, if Israel didn't do it, then whatever's in that house would have been slain. But God was giving Moses an instruction here, and he was trying to make him understand what's coming. Now, once again, throughout the Old Testament, God speaks audibly. Dr. Patricia mentioned a moment ago, in Genesis 3, verse 8, Adam and Eve are hiding. And the voice of God comes in the cool of the evening walking. I know she was the voice of God's walking. That's a thought. But he said, Adam, Eve, where are you? They said, we're hiding. They had a guilty conscience. But all the way through Genesis, we see that. He warned Noah in Genesis 7 about the flood coming. Genesis 12, he told Abraham about the covenant. Genesis 3 and verse 4, he told again to Moses of how the deliverance was going to come. Then Samuel. But here's the point. When he spoke with an audible voice, it was for a purpose. He didn't just chat with folks. Now remember, whether he speaks audibly or within, it's going to be according to his word, but it'll be for a divine purpose. In the New Testament, we know Jesus is baptized in the water by John the Baptist, comes up out of the water, heavens open, remember, and a voice from heaven, and everybody heard it. It wasn't just Jesus. Everybody around it heard it. This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Then on the Mount of Transfiguration in Matthew chapter 17, when Peter, James, and John went on the mountain with Jesus, he's illuminated. Moses comes and stands on one side, Elijah on the other. That tells me something. When you go to heaven, you don't just go to sleep and never wake up. Elijah was wide awake, and so was Moses. They descended and came up. Now, remember, Moses didn't get to go into the promised land till that moment. But here was the thing. God spoke out of heaven and said, this is my beloved Son, but he changed what he said, hear him. You've got Moses with the law. You've got Elijah with the law of the prophets, but here's my Son. Hear him. Now, God will speak with dreams and visions. We get to the next page here. Excuse me. Haven't done this since our Bible college. In Joel chapter 2, most of us know that verse 28. Your old men will dream dreams. Man, I must be old because I dream all the time. Old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. Then in Genesis chapter 15 and verse 1, God speaks in a vision to Abram, before his name is changed, about giving him a son. And then in Genesis 28:10, Jacob has a dream of a ladder going up and down to heaven. Genesis 41, Joseph is in prison, and remember, Joseph has a dream, Pharaoh has a dream, and Joseph interprets the dream. It goes on and on and on. Now, I remember many, many years ago, must have been, 1980, I think, my first airplane that I bought. The Lord made it available. He can be so specific if we listen. I literally, in this vision, now vision is like this. I hold my hand up. You can see me, I can see you, but I'm looking through my hand. And the same way with you. You hold your hand up, you can see me, and you're looking through this as a vision. I saw this airplane as clear as I see you right now. And it wasn't in a dream, it was wide open. I was wide awake. It was red and white. I even saw the type it was. It was a 6-passenger Piper Cherokee 6. And I even saw part of the tail number, which is what's on the tail like a license number, November 4468. And I'll never forget it in my life. And it was amazing. In a matter of a few days after I saw that, and I've shared this story many times, a man from Orlando that I knew called and said, I have an airplane you might be interested in. Come on up here and see it. I went right to it. It was red and white, just like I said. It was the type of airplane, and it also had the tail numbers. Now, that's how specific God can be. Now, if we could only hear that all the time. Now, in Ezekiel 37, remember, Ezekiel saw that famous vision, the valley of dry bones. So dreams and visions are a method of revelation. Don't discount it when you have a dream. There's many, many books out on this, and sometimes you have to be careful what you read about some of the dreams. But God will give you an interpretation of the dream if you pray. It could be about a person. It could be about something He's calling you to do. I remember another incident, this is 1982, that I'd been working in the mission field in Central and South America and Honduras. And the Lord spoke to myself and another man, Brother Bobby Burnett, about going to Belize and starting a mission. Well, first of all, I was not going to move there. And I know Bobby was not going to move there. But I found a man who had been to Belize several times, so he went with us. Now, here's what the Lord showed me in a vision. Actually, I dreamed it, then I saw it openly. I saw myself shaking hands with the vice president or vice prime minister. Never seen the guy before. This was 1981 when George Price was the president or prime minister of the country of Belize when they were under the ruling of the United Kingdom. Then they broke away. They had an election, etc. Anyway, long story. I knew God was sending us there to do a great work for Him, but I didn't know exactly what to do. So anyway, long story, we went to the we call it the palace, but we went to the government housing or the wherever the government meets, the government seat, I'm sorry. Anyway, we came to the secretary. We had an appointment with the president, the new president, and she said, he's busy, you'll have to wait. So we waited and we waited. We joined hands, began to pray. There were 4 of us. And we stood over by the elevator, then came back and sat down. We sat there for almost an hour, and she came out and said, the president cannot see you. Something has come up. At that very moment, the vice president walked out. Now, I've seen this in a vision. And he walked over to the 4 of us and said, can I help you? I introduced myself. My name's Pastor Langston. I'm from Florida. And the Lord has sent us here to build a project. And he said, well, great. What can I do? I said, we need permission from the government, first of all. And secondly, we need property, and we'll pay for it. And he said, well, let's talk about it a moment. He said, before we do, let's join hands and pray. So, I'm squeezing one of the guy's hands and the other one. I don't want him to go Pentecostal on this guy because I don't know anything about him. But as soon as we join hands, the vice president started speaking in tongues. And I said, wow, we got it. Make the story the short version of it. As we finished, he said, I see the place where you need to go. It's called Red River. And he said, I tell you what we'll do. We don't sell land right now at this point to those out of the country because we didn't have a Belizean representative. He said, I tell you what, we'll give this property to you and we'll lease it to you for $1 a year. Now, this was almost 20 acres. We built 2 churches, we built 2 schools in another area and continued to go back and forth. But here's the point. It all started with having a vision. The vision was this. I see my hand, but I see you. And do your hand the very same way. Look at me. Just get an image. And that's the way a vision comes. Sometimes it may be just totally clear and no obstacles, but other times just like that. Now, the vision that comes, it's for a purpose. Again, God doesn't just throw things out there. Like sometimes it can come as a flash of light. It just goes before you. Someone's face goes before you. Now, why is that face coming before you? God's asking you to pray. As an example, someone texted me last night from Indiana, a minister that I know, and it hadn't been 5 minutes before that I had his face and his wife come right before my eyes. And he texted me and said, just want to let you know we love you, miss you, blah, 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 blah. How are you doing? And I texted him back. I said, you're not going to believe this. I was just about to text you. See, God does that. Yeah. And the purpose was he needed to hear something that I told him. Okay, let me continue on with this. Comes as a flash of light, a person's face, a person's name, or a place. Now, a dream can often be something that God's calling you to do. I remember when I first began in ministry 56 plus years ago, I was in Orlando, Florida, visiting in a revival. And this was audible. And I knew I was called to ministry, but this gentleman called me out of the crowd, didn't know me from Adam, and said, God's called you to ministry. And I thought, I don't want to do this. I think I want to, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm arguing with God. And I stayed there for a couple of days. And then the next morning after that, I went into the church at 9 o'clock that morning, and I stayed till almost 6 before the service started, praying and laying on my face before God. I heard his voice as loud as you hear me right now, and then I saw a flash of the vision. He said, when you move, I'll move. And when I move, you move. Because I was saying, God, how do I know? How do I know? How do I know? See, he will give you an example. Sometimes it's not complicated. It's like I said a few moments ago, he'll speak in a way we understand. I remember the first time that I met the king of the Ashanti people in Ghana, West Africa. I saw a picture of the man before in a magazine, but then I kept seeing his face before me over and over and over. Long story, but the opportunity came that I was presented to him, and God was preparing me of a prophetic word to give to him. Now, another time, let me give you another quick thing. We're rushing through this. In my early gospel tent ministry, I had an 18-wheeler and the tractor, the truck that pulled it, and it needed tires. I mean, badly tires. This was probably 1969. I can't remember, 68, 69. And I didn't have the money to buy the tires. Back then, they were expensive, just like they are. I think maybe back then, maybe a truck tire was like $400 or something like that. You can't hardly buy a good car tire for that today. Anyway, I had a dream. And I dreamed this at night, just as real as you can see me. And I saw this lady in the middle of the congregation. We had a large crowd. And she had a red dress on, carrying a black purse. And she had her hair up in one of those Pentecostal buns on the top of her head. And the Lord said, I'm going to heal her. Now, I didn't know what was wrong with her until I ministered. After preaching, I would always minister to the sick. And I saw her, and I went back to her. and this was not visible. She had a scarf around her neck. I said, you have a goiter on the right side of your neck. And she began to weep. She said, yes. I touched her. She swallowed it. It was gone. I'm walking away, and she said, wait a minute. God sent me here. She said, I don't believe just to be healed, but the Lord said to me, you have a need. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, if you only knew. And this was so accurate. She said, the Lord said you needed tires for your 18-wheeler. Now, it's parked out back, and you couldn't see it in the darkness, so I know that she hadn't been out there. And she said, tell me how many tires you need. And I told her, and she pulled out a wad of $100 bills. Back then, I'd never seen so many. She started counting them out and counting them. We got to $3,000, and she was going to stop. I said, no, keep on. But the whole thing was, I saw that in the beginning. See, God will do the same thing to you. You may say, well, I'm not called to ministry. We're all called to ministry. You may not be called to a pulpit ministry, but you're called as a minister. Paul told the church at Corinth, God has made us able ministers. Now, long story, just keep going here. Let me get with it. Dreams and vision are given for a reference point. As an example, God gives you a vision or a dream about what you're going to do, and then the devil attacks you, maybe even family attacks you about what you're going to do, but that dream or that vision is a reference point. You can always go back to it. That's why I've always written these things down. Now, vision is a direct illumination from God and can come while we're asleep or while we're awake. Daniel said, a dream interpreted is a night vision. Now, Peter saw a vision which changed the Gentile nation in Acts chapter 10. I think you need to turn the page. In Acts chapter 10, or maybe I don't have it up there for you. Acts chapter 10, verse 19, Peter is on the housetop praying in the middle of the day. He's not asleep. And he has a vision. Now, maybe it's a vision like this. He's looking and he sees a sheet coming down from heaven, a four-cornered sheet. And inside the sheet, he sees all manner of common or unclean beasts. They were not kosher. The Jews did not eat this. And the voice out of the heavens said, rise, Peter, rise, kill and eat. And he said, no, Lord, I've never eaten anything common or unclean. Now, he knew it was God talking. But he said, don't call unclean what I have cleansed. God was preparing him to go to the Gentiles. That's how the Gentile move began to start. Now, a vision comes. Remember, where is it? 2 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul had an out-of-body experience, but it was a vision. And he said he was caught up to the third heaven, and he saw things that are unlawful for a man to utter. It was unlawful in that day because it was not accepted. Now, was he really had an out-of-body experience? I believe so. There are those that say they have had an out-of-body experience. I've had it one time in my life. I don't have time to go into all of it. But there are those people that will tell you, I have out-of-body experiences all the time. And sometimes I want to say to them, you need to stay in your body. Because what you're seeing is not always God. But a vision comes in our soul realm, the mind, will, desire, and intellect. It doesn't always come in your spirit. It comes in your spirit, but your spirit becomes the illumination. It becomes the projection of it. Now, example, in your mind's eye, you're seeing something that's not normal, or you're doing something that's not normal. Now, we have an imaging source, our born-again imagination. A lot of people, believers, are afraid of imagination. But let's do it this way. Your imagination, you're going to go on vacation in 3 or 4 days. And you lay down to go to sleep at night, and you wait, your dreams, or maybe even you wake up, you're seeing what you're going to do on your vacation. You're seeing where you're going to go. You're seeing maybe what you're going to do, what's going to happen, maybe where you're going to eat. You may not be seeing all of it, but it's there. That's your imagination. Your born-again imagination, God speaks through that without us realizing it sometimes. He has given us all, everybody, sinner, saint alike, an imagination. Now, he uses what I call our harnessed imaging source, our mind's eye. Example, someone says to you, how's Joe doing? Joe Jones. Well, you know, he's doing real good. What happens? If you pause and think, Joe's face comes before you. Or, what kind of car are you driving now? Immediately, that kind of car comes before you. It's a flash. See, God uses that. Don't ever discount it. He uses that. Paul in Acts chapter 16, Paul has a vision that he could have been awake or in prayer or asleep. But again, vision comes as a reference point. How can I put this? What you can see, you conceive and give birth to it. What you can see, you conceive, and then you give birth to it. Some dreams and visions come because of our state of mind. We think we're seeing things, or we think that we're hearing the correct voice. Many years ago, a young lady that followed me around in several meetings came to me one day, and she said, God said, I'm supposed to marry you. And I said, I'm flattered, but I don't think you and my wife will get along. Now, it was in her imagination. Now, without realizing it, here's what happens sometimes too, not the audible voice, but a vision or a dream, that maybe someone will have a dream that they're supposed to marry this other person, but that person is happily married. Well, that's not God. Or maybe they're having a vision of this person, and they know this one well, and they're going to marry this person, but this person's not serving God. But that individual that has this dream or this imagined vision says, I'll change them. I know when we get married, I'll change them and they'll serve God. I heard about this young lady and her mother one time that she was dating this young man, true story, that was not saved. And she came home one day and said, Mom, he wants me to marry him, but he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God and he doesn't believe in hell. She said, honey, marry him. You and I both will show him what hell really is. Okay, almost done here. In Genesis chapter 11, we're again here about imagination. Remember, imagination can come for success, inventions, innovation. The Wright brothers, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, the list just goes on and on. And that comes in the imagination. Now, in the Tower of Babel, Genesis chapter 11, remember the people of Babylon said, we will build a tower all the way to the heavens. Now, God hears this. They're not having a vision, but they're imagining we're going to build this tower all the way up to God. God hears it. And he says, obviously he's talking to Jesus and talking to the Holy Spirit. He said, let us go down and confound their language, lest they do what they've set in their hearts to do. Because, number one, they are one people, and they're all saying the same thing. And that this is an imagination. So God had to interrupt what was going on. Now, we know they couldn't have done that, but he said if we don't interrupt it, that's how the languages spread worldwide at that time. Now, God also speaks, quickly here, through inner voice and through conscience. We just covered a part of that. Everyone has a conscience, but we don't always follow it. God can say things to us, and it doesn't agree with what we want to do, and it's easy to say, that's not God, because we don't want to do it. None of us have ever done that, especially the people here at HighPlaces. You that are watching, I'm sure you've done it, but none of us. If it goes against sometime what we really want to do, we can just sear our conscience, say no way. Yeah. Now, there is scripture that said God will sear the conscience. He will send them strong delusion because they believe a lie. They'll not believe the truth, and they'll be judged. Now, conscience, we know, is the capacity within to do what's right and wrong. We know that. The inner voice is an inner witness. It's an agreement. It's a quickening, a rush feeling or a rush of emotion. That's another way that you know God's talking to you in the inner voice. It's like a rush. You know what I mean? Like a sugar rush. You know, you're not getting the whole message, but you know God's talking to you. Now, Several years ago, true story. Um, I'm trying to remember where I heard this, but true story. A group of young people in Indonesia, there were 12 young people in their late teens in Indonesia that were in a revival, and people were being healed and delivered and set free a number of years ago. And they were so turned on, they said, we're going to do what our people have never done. So all of them went down to the river, and the river is rapids moving. And they prayed together, and then they began to wade in the water and said, we're going to walk on water. True story. The pastor said, wait, young people, wait. They said, no, pastor, we have a word from the Lord. And as they all walked out and got in the water together, the waves overcame them and they drowned. There was a bridge just less than 100 yards down from them that they could have walked across the river. Now, my point is this. Number one, it was tempting God. But secondly, they were convinced by a voice because of what they heard preached that they could do it right then. Now, that's tempting God. We know that. So we're going to clear this up in our next session a little bit more about this. But let's continue on real quick here on the inner voice, inner witness. We have 5 natural senses. Are we on that part yet? I'm sorry. 5 natural senses. Keep going. We'll find them. The next page. There we go. Okay, we know we have hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, and smelling. But your spiritual senses is your inner, not in her, but inner hearing. You hear it with spiritual ears. I mean, you can't hear down here, but it's rising up and you're hearing as if someone's talking in your ears. That's your spiritual ear. And then your inner eyes. Your natural eyes see things, but behind that, God shows you what he wants you to do. Now, it looks like it's your natural eye, but you're actually seeing a projection. Just like we're using a computer here to put this up on the screen. It was programmed to put this up here. So God programs our spiritual eyes to see beyond where we are, what we're to do, etc. Then it goes on with the mind of the Spirit. With those that have the mind of the Spirit do the will of God, as Scripture said. Then the will of the Spirit and the emotions of the Spirit. Your spirit, we know we're a body. This body lives in a soul and has a spirit. If I die right this moment, my body falls off my spirit, and my soul and spirit goes to be with him. But here, God has a will. Since Holy Spirit has come in, it has merged with my will and my spirit. It has merged, we say heart, but it has merged with my spirit. When he wants to direct me, Holy Spirit, listen, Holy Spirit is a person. He's the third person of the Trinity. He's a reality. He's not just some ghost out there in the atmosphere. He's real. He speaks. He has feelings. Paul said you could grieve the Holy Spirit. But he has this way of speaking to us in our inner ear, in our inner eyes, to see what we don't normally see. And we're not even aware of it sometimes. And we need to be conscious of this when he's trying to speak to us. Now, if you hear with your spirit ear and your inner voice and you're out of your spirit, you'll never be deceived. I can't say that I've never been deceived. I have made decisions over the years that I remember one time my daughter said to me, or actually said to Mom, about a certain ministry that was working with us. They didn't trust them. Well, I did. And it wound up in disaster. Now, I was convinced because I could see the potential, but God saw the future. God saw what was coming. See, he doesn't just speak of what's going on now, what's coming, what's happening. Hallelujah. Okay, almost done. I know you're almost done here. He speaks with pictures on the wall. He can speak from the stars. Talking about God's going to talk out of heaven. Yeah, you see a picture. Road signs. Mile markers. I've had the Lord do this to me, I don't know how many times. I'm not going to exaggerate, but mile markers on a highway, and I might be praying in my spirit or just meditating and thinking in my spirit, Lord, how much longer is it going to take me to get where you want me to go? And I get to mile marker number 1. And my attention's drawn right to it. Now, he doesn't always do that, but see, don't close your mind to how he can speak. He can speak through news telecasts, etc. Now, we need to keep ourselves alert of what's going on, what's happening, most of all, what's next. What is it going to do that's next? Psalms 23, David said, he leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Proverbs 4:18 says, the path of the just or the righteous is as the shining light that shines more and more unto a perfect day. Then we all know the verse in Romans 8:14, as many as are led by the Spirit of God are the sons of God. Now, next week, I'm going to be a little more clear with this. I want to talk to you about thoughts and impressions, back to what we did on page 1, speaking to us through his word and how to discern what that word means to us, prophetic utterances, gifts of the Spirit, and the 5 ministry gifts. Now, if you're watching us and you have not taken Jesus or accepted him as your Savior, none of this applies to you. However, God can talk to you even if you're a heathen. He speaks to sinners even. And how do you think we come to the Lord? We may hear a message about salvation or a message about success, and we think, man, that's what I want. And so he will speak through that. But perhaps you've not taken the time to give your heart to him. It's not hard. All you have to say is, Jesus, I admit I'm a sinner. Forgive me for my sins. Come into my heart. I accept you as my Lord and Savior. And he'll do it. Now, maybe you're one of those that has kind of flip-flopped in and out because of life and life struggles. I understand that. We all go through it. But what he will do is renew you in your spirit. All you have to do is ask him, Lord, help me, pick me up from where I've fallen and let me move forward. And again, you don't have to start all over. You start from where you stopped. And he's faithful. If you need healing, believe what his word said. Healing is in your body. If you're a believer, healing dwells within you. It doesn't come down from heaven. It already has. Healing will rise up on the inside of you. Peace will rise up on the inside of you. It doesn't come down. It already has, like I said, on the day of Pentecost. Well, God bless you. We're so glad if you joined us. We're looking forward to you next Sunday. We begin our service at 10:45 here at 221 Suite A, Paul's Drive in Brandon, adjacent to the Brandon Post Office. And then we go on Facebook, hopefully sometimes, between 11:15 and 11:20. God bless you. Be blessed all this week and take him at his word and do it. Remember what the word said? Have you ever seen that little sticker that says, what would Jesus do? Remember that Paul said we can do all things through Christ. So just go do it. Till next week. God bless you.